Hello my internet peeps, how are you today? Welcome to my channel. This is Scott Rideshare. Welcome, 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 welcome. Alright, so today what I want to talk about is I have a lot of, one of the things, if you've watched my previous videos, that I enjoy so much about what I do is all the different people that I get to meet and talk to. And it's a large variety of subjects. And one subject that seems to come up a lot is conspiracy theories. And that's because it's a broad subject. Now, not everyone knows this about me, but I love conspiracy theories. Okay? Now, I don't necessarily believe conspiracy theories, but if I hear about a conspiracy theory, I start reading about it. That's just the way I am. When I try to explain to people what I believe about conspiracy theories, most of the times I get put into this category of a conspiracy theorist. And I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, trying to prevent aliens from reading my mind. That's really not the case. I'm what I consider an opportunist. And what happens around is people being opportunists. And I'm going to give you an example of that. But before I forget, please check down below in the description link. What you'll see is my eBay account where I have a collection of very stylish tinfoil hats. So you don't have to worry about aliens reading your mind or taking over your mind or anything like that. Alright, so here's what I mean about opportunists, okay? And why I don't believe conspiracy theories. I was talking to this lady friend of mine, a couple years ago. And she was telling me that she does believe in conspiracies. And she said, here's why I believe in conspiracies. She said she was driving to work, and on the radio, there was a doctor talking about how pineapples remove cellulite from women's thighs. She said the next time she went into Publix, she saw this huge display of pineapples there. Well, that's not irrefutable proof to me about a conspiracy. To me, what that is proof of is my opportunist theory, where people are opportunists. So let me give you an example of that. This doctor, whether he's right or wrong, comes up with this theory about pineapples and cellulite, okay? So he writes a book and he's promoting the book, okay? He goes on the radio and he's promoting it. He's trying to get the book sold, whether it's just to line his pockets or whether he's really trying to help people. It doesn't matter. This is what he's doing. He's getting, he's doing interviews for the book. And what happens is that in retail, you have a buyer. And this goes from the smallest mom and pop store to the largest retail chain in the world, Walmart. You have buyers. Now the small mom and pop store, generally the proprietor is wearing many hats, right? They're probably not tinfoil wearing hats, but they're wearing many hats, and one of them is as a buyer. And in Walmart, you have what's known as a buyer. And what their goal is to buy products for the store to make a profit. That's all it really is. And any buyer that's worth their, weight in gold or worth their salt or any expression you want to come up with is going to look to make a profit from things. They're going to keep their ear to the ground. They're going to look at markets and buying trends and things of that nature and buy based on that because they want the store to make money. Okay? So what happens is you'll have like a buyer in Publix, which is where this lady went to. Publix, by the way, for those of you who don't know, here in South Florida, and I think they go up into Georgia, is a family-owned, supermarket. You have Kroger's, I think, out on the West Coast. I've heard the name. I've never been in a Kroger's, but I believe they're on the West Coast. And then up in New York, I remember the A&P and Pathmark. Well, down here, you have Winn-Dixie and Publix. And she said that she went into Publix, and that's where she saw the display. So the buyer would sit there and hear that there's a doctor out there writing a book saying pineapples get rid of cellulite on women's thighs. So what do you think the buyer's going to do? Yeah, buy pineapples. I mean, there's no conspiracy behind it. It's not like the buyer got together with the writer or the writer got together with the pineapple farm guy. That's not the way it works. The buyer just heard about it, bought a lot of pineapples. Now the manager, the produce manager, gets these pineapples off the truck. And he knows his job is not to have it sit in the back and go bad, but to get it out on the floor. He may never have heard of this pineapple thing. He just sees pineapples come off the truck. And what does he do? He builds a nice display, or has one of his people build a nice display. It's not a conspiracy. It's just people taking advantage of whatever opportunities are presented to them. That's all it really is. It's very simple. Now, when it comes to conspiracies, see, that's one of the reasons why I don't really believe in conspiracies. I believe that people are opportunists, even though people have a tendency to, every time, I question every narrative, okay? Pretty much any narrative you give me, I'm going to question it. I'm going to test it. Just because everyone believes something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. The vast majority of my life, I believed I had part Indian in me. I believed there was a tribe, I forget the name of the tribe, but it was part of the Iroquois Nation up in the New York area, and that we had a portion of that in us, our family, from my mom's side. Well, it comes to find out in the last couple of years, we found out it ain't true. First of all, we can't find the tribe listed anywhere, number one. And number two, it's not in any DNA test from my mom's side of the family. And it's not like my mom and her brothers and sisters were fooling us kids. It's that they were told this. Now, whether, my grandmother and her brothers and sisters were fooling the kids, or whether they believed it, we don't know. We don't have that information. But the fact is that for the longest time, I believed that it was part Indian. And then I come to find out recently that no, it's not there. So, at least not on my mother's side. So, anyway, that's why one of the reasons why I always question narratives. It's like, just because you're told something and believe something, it doesn't mean you shouldn't test it to see where it's true or where it's wrong. And the second you question a narrative, people have a tendency to think you're wearing tinfoil hats. Check my link down below. Anyway, also, when I try to explain what this means with opportunists, where people are opportunists, people have a tendency to label it off as conspiracy. And it's not. That's not the definition of a conspiracy. Conspiracy means two people getting together, two or more people getting together and conspiring to do something. That's not what happened. And in this particular case with the pineapples, there was no conspiracy. Somebody believed it was, not me, my lady friend, she believed there was a conspiracy, but it wasn't a conspiracy. So anyway, I want to go into JFK for a second. JFK is probably what started a lot of the huge conspiracies that are running around now. I remember when my thirst for conspiracy started up. I believe it started with that movie, JFK by Oliver Stone, starring Kevin Costner. Excellent movie, by the way. I would highly recommend it, whether you believe it was a conspiracy or not. The movie itself is well done. And there's at one point, now, by the way, it's based on true events, but it's not a true story. When Hollywood makes these movies, there's a distinction between that. And a lot of times when they say based on true events, people think it's a true story. No, it's not a true story, but it is based on true events that actually happened. Anyway, there's at one point where Kevin Costner's character is sitting on a park bench in Washington, D.C. And Donald Sutherland's character is telling him everyone involved in the conspiracy. It had the Russians, the Soviet Union, I should say, back then. It had the Cubans. It had the mob, Italian mob. It had the CIA. Even went into the vice president at the time, who became president, President Johnson. Now, at the time the movie was made, I don't believe President Johnson was. Well, sorry. Let me correct that. At the year the movie was supposedly happened in, I don't believe President Johnson was president at the time. He may have been, but my time frame's a little off. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. I recommend the movie. I would like to watch it again sometime as soon as I get a chance. But anyway, these conspiracies kind of collapse under their own weight. That what Donald Sutherland was explaining was just way too big. You can't have something like that without information getting out there or dead bodies showing up. Let me give you an example of that. Another true story. Goodfellas. By the way, every guy should have Goodfellas, Godfather 1 and 2, and Scarface in their library, whether it's digital, whether it's Blu-ray, or whether you're going old school with DVD. You should have those three movies in your library. These are guys' movies. And women, I'm not excluding you. You could watch them. You could enjoy them. You won't get out of it what guys get out of it. These are guys' movies. In either case, Goodfellas was based on a book that was written by a man named Henry Hill. And Henry Hill was actually a mobster. He got into the Italian mob as far as he could get. He wasn't Italian, so he couldn't go very far. He had to stop at a certain point. And they talk in the movie about, in the book, they talk about how you never rat out your friends. It's like at the very beginning of the movie. Yeah, here we have a book where the guy's ratting out his friends. He wrote a tell-all book about it. But he was in the witness protection program when he wrote the book. And part of what led to that is the Lufthansa heist and the dead bodies that turned up subsequently. Now, I remember the Lufthansa heist. What do I remember about it? I mean, I remember hearing about it on the news. It was, I was somebody who kind of avoided the news at the time. I wasn't paying attention a whole lot. But I remember people talking about it. It was a huge heist. It was a big deal. And what I also remember was subsequent weeks, dead bodies turning up in dumpsters and around. I mean, there were a lot of dead bodies showing up. Now, I never put the two together. When I was watching the movie, I was like, and listen, if you have a huge conspiracy, you're going to have a trail of dead bodies. I don't care what anyone says. You're going to have people who are going to want to snitch, like Henry Hill did, and you're going to have a trail of dead bodies. Either or. So that's one of the reasons why I believe they get too big and they collapse under their own weight. It's just impossible to have that large of people involved without dead bodies turning up and without people snitching. So what I do believe is there will always be questions that need to be answered. And in JFK's example of the assassination of JFK, let's take, for example, the most recent question I have is when Donald Trump was running for president, he said on the campaign trail he was going to release all the JFK papers when he was president. Then when he got the presidency, when he won the election, he said, I'm going to release the JFK papers when the date comes up, because there was a certain date, and at that date beyond, he could release the papers. Okay. Well, the date came. Did he release all the papers? No. He released some of the papers. Some of the papers he kept back. Why? That's my question. The narrative is that it was a lone gunman. He buys a gun, he hates JFK, he goes up on the book depository, boom, and blows JFK's head off. Horrible, okay? But that's the narrative. So if that's the narrative, why do you need to keep papers hidden for national security? It doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not saying the CIA was involved, but why not release all the papers if the narrative is it was a lone gunman? So, I mean, you could believe it one way or the other, whether it's true or not. I'm just saying, answer the damn question. You're not going to be able to answer it. And there's a lot of theories about it. There's books about witnesses disappearing, people that were there disappearing and or dying. Again, the conspiracy kind of collapses, but you can read it and it's you could say something is there. There's questions that need to be answered. And that's one of the things I find so fascinating about them. Whether I believe them or not, it's fascinating. You know, you could tell me the earth is flat, and I'll go, oh yeah, prove it to me. And I'll listen to what you have to say. I may not believe you, but I'll listen to what you have to say about the flat earth theory, which is kind of running around rampant on the internet right now. Anyway, I want to move on a bit, because I had a guy in the car, and we were talking about conspiracy theories. We were having a great conversation about it. It was a short trip to the airport. And as we're kind of pulling into the airport, he was saying, yeah, you know, I researched 9/11, and I don't believe that was a conspiracy. Now, before I continue this, let me interrupt for a second. I want to say that 9/11 was horrible. It was very tragic. I personally did not lose anybody, but people I know have lost people. And You know, that person is gone. You're never going to get that person back. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy. I never want to diminish not even one life that was lost in the 9/11 tragedy. Ever. I don't want anyone to ever think I'm diminishing those lives at all. I feel for those people that have lost loved ones. My condolences. The police officers, the firemen, the first responders that have rushed into these burning buildings to save innocent lives, as well as innocent lives. My heart goes out to anyone who's lost somebody for that. I want to make that abundantly clear before I continue. Okay. So anyway, right after the guy says that, I said to him, 9/11 is a perfect example of why I love conspiracy theories, why I love reading about them, because questions pop up. And here's my question about 9/11, okay? You had 2 planes fly into 2 buildings, yet 3 buildings came down. Now, I'm not saying the U.S. government blew up the buildings. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how and why did that 3rd building come down? Now, the guy, he was younger than me, so I'm guessing, we never talked age, but I'm guessing he was probably about 10 when 9/11 happened. And he said he researched it. Plus, it was fairly obvious the guy had a higher education level than me. In other words, he graduated college, whereas I didn't. The thing is that he said he researched it, but he never heard of Tower 7. He said, wait, a 3rd building came down? And I said, yes, Tower 7. You didn't hear about that? Let me explain World Trade Plaza for a second. A lot, for those of you that have never been before 9/11, I haven't been since 9/11, so I don't know what it looks like now. But, you know, when photographers take photos of it, they're like way back. So you could see the landscape, you could see the skyline, you could see the 2 towers. It's hard to imagine what it's like standing like between the 2 buildings. It's massive, it's huge. I mean, these buildings were huge. I'm going to repeat myself. Anyway, it was big, right? Now, around the plaza, you had other buildings. And I don't know how high the numbering went, at least to 7. But you had, you know, Tower 1 and Tower 2, and then you had 3, 4, 5, 6. And then next to Towers 1 and 2 were 5 and 6. Behind Towers 5 and 6, that was separating Towers 1 and 2, was Tower 7. Tower 7 collapsed at about 5:45. I'm going by memory. I could be off on the time. It was somewhere between 5:30 and 5:45. Okay. Now, the narrative is that it was on fire all day long, and that's the reason why it collapsed. Now, listen, if you tell me the towers came down because of jet fuel on fire, I'm going to go, wow, jet fuel burns pretty freaking hot. I can believe it. All right. Do I believe it is another story? But I can believe that jet fuel will bring those towers down. Towers that I was told ever since they were built when I was a kid that they can't come down. I would believe that you fly a plane full of jet fuel into the building, and yes, it can burn and collapse the building. Again, whether I believe the narrative or not is a whole nother issue, which I'm not going to get into. However, there was no jet fuel in this building. It was a regular fire. And if you look at the history of steel constructions, which is what this building was, it's never collapsed a building. A regular fire has never collapsed a steel structured building. Now, it could have been the guy that built the building, who was in charge of it, used inferior materials and pocketed the difference between the prices. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that could be what brought it down. But why is it that it's not brought up at all? I mean, you know, I read the 9/11 report. I don't recall it being in there, although another person who believes it was a conspiracy said it was briefly mentioned, which means I have to go back and reread the book, which I don't really have a lot of time to, but I'm going to go back and reread 9/11 report eventually. But I don't recall seeing it in there. And this guy who said he researched it never heard about it at all. No one's talking about it. And my question is, how do 2 buildings hit two planes hit 2 buildings and 3 buildings come down? You need to answer. If that question gets adequately answered, I will absolutely say there's no conspiracy involved. Never mind that Tower 7 held a apparently some documents, some secret documents. I don't know one way or the other. This is what I'm hearing, okay? And this is one of the reasons why conspiracy theories will always be alive. Again, I'm not saying it's anything more than these hijackers who conspired. I'm not saying the government was involved. What I'm saying is, how did that building come down? Riddle me that, Batman. So anyway, this guy was all fired up at this point. He's like, oh man, I need to research it. I go, yeah, Tower 7. It came down the same day. No one ever talks about it. And I want to know how two planes hit 2 buildings and 3 buildings came down. And then we kind of got to the stop and I let him go. Another lady was in my car and we were again talking about conspiracy theories. And she was saying that she was anti-Trump. And she was saying that Trump purposely manipulated the American public with stepping stones, taking him to the presidency. Now, listen, honestly, I believe pretty much every president makes stepping stones to the presidency. What she was saying was not that far off. Whether you approve of Trump or you disapprove of Trump, it doesn't matter. Whether you approved of Obama or disapproved of Obama, it doesn't matter. In some portion in the back part of his mind, the front part of his or her or their minds, they were looking at steps to get to the presidency, one way or the other. Whether they actually believed it at first or not, whether they purposely said, I'm going to be president, that's not important. Almost everything was a stepping stone. So what she was saying was really not that far off, okay? Actually, let me give you an example of somebody who I believe really didn't make any stepping stones to the presidency, and that was President Ford, Gerald Ford. What happened was you had, for those of you who don't know, you had Nixon and Agnew running, and they won. And then shortly after they won, Vice President Agnew resigned from a scandal. And President Nixon appointed Gerald Ford as vice president. And Vice President, so Gerald Ford, sorry about that, everyone. Something happened on my iPad. I hope that doesn't look too weird. And since I do things unedited, I don't know what it's going to look like to you. Anyway, Vice President Gerald Ford was appointed vice president. He wasn't part of the election process. And then shortly after that, President Nixon, he resigned because of Watergate. And Gerald Ford is now president of the United States. And it wasn't like he made stepping stones to get there. Now, he did make stepping stones to get him into that position where he was appointed, but he wound up president without going through the election process and without being elected. So I don't really consider that kind of scenario. But pretty much everyone else, you know, they kind of, if you look at their career path, yeah, they're doing that. So to me, what she was saying was not really that far off. Now, her friends who, based on what she was telling me, appeared to be pro-Trump, was telling her, you need to stop with these conspiracy theories. And that's part of my problem. You know, they all of a sudden were thinking she was wearing a tinfoil hat. Check my link down below for eBay. Anyway, that was not, like, if he was doing stepping stones, which he most likely was, it's not a conspiracy. He was making prepared steps to get to the presidency. Whether he was going to announce it right away or whether he was keeping his cards close to his chest, that's a whole other issue. But that's not a conspiracy if one person is making prepared steps to get somewhere. Do you follow what I'm saying? But all of a sudden, they're telling her to stop with conspiracy theories. She's a tinfoil wearing hat person. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this shed some light onto all of this stuff. Those of you who know me, I hope you got to know me a little bit better. Those of you who believe or disbelieve in conspiracy theories, I hope you got something out of this video. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, share the video. I would love to hear comments. Now, I know a lot of people who see this will probably have the urge to post proof of whether something's a conspiracy or not. That's fine. I'm happy with that. I may not read it right away. I'll get to it eventually, so I will appreciate it. Chances are I've already read it, but yeah, please, because there may be a chance I didn't read it. So I'd like to hear it. And then comments. I'd like to hear your comments on it. I did another video on opinions, and I don't think people's opinions are wrong. I want to do a follow-up video on that. But in either case, go ahead and comment below. Let me know what you're thinking about this whole thing. And understand that, I don't believe conspiracies. I believe opportunities. People are taking advantage of opportunities that are presented to them. That's what's happening. That's why you have these things. And it could look like a conspiracy when in fact it's not. Two people never got together saying we're going to get this done. But something happened, something somewhere along the way happened, and it looked like people were in on it. Anyway, also below in the description box, if you want to have interesting conversations about conspiracy theories with your passengers and make some extra part-time money on the side, I have some links down below for that. I also have some links if you're a passenger to save some money for one app or the other. You can also order your favorite driver if you want. You can pick and choose from another link that I have down below. So take a look at the description box real quick. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you like the video. Also comment. I'd love to hear your comments, okay? I hope you have a great day. This is Scott Rideshare.